So now you know everybody very when to do something.
Okay.
So the three panelists that we have, Jason from, we're going to say Jason from Barefoot University, Brandon from Probability Physical Therapy, and Dave from New Balance. And they're going to each speak a few minutes about their position and what they're seeing, and they're going to explain their spot in barefoot running, minimalist running. And we're going to start with Jason. We'll each give them a couple minutes to kind of speak about their point, and then we'll do some Q&A and kind of feed off of each other and go from there.
Okay, thanks for coming, everybody. I appreciate you guys coming out, and thank you guys for inviting me over. My name is Jason Rowe. I've been barefoot running for a couple of years now. I've really sort of taken a role of educating people about running form, mostly through barefoot running. I hold clinics. I have a book that I sell. And as part of the education bit, my wife and I are planning on taking our 3 kids and going on a cross-country RV trip for 6 months. Going all around the country teaching about barefoot running, running in minimalist shoes, and running form and stuff. We're pretty excited about that. But my own story as far as how I came to barefoot running was really pretty similar to most people that decide to give it a try. My goal was to run races. I wanted to run ultra marathons, and I started training, the coaxing of my wife. Started training in the spring for a fall 50-miler. Got hurt all the time. I spent about 2/3 of the days of my training days I had to skip because I was injured, and ended up running a marathon that year instead of the 50-miler, and it hurt a lot. But I was still hooked on running. That winter I did some research, came across an obscure article about barefoot running. As far as it could strengthen your feet, and there was some injury prevention aspect to it. That intrigued me because as a little kid growing up in northern Michigan, I ran around barefoot a lot, just because there was nothing else to do in northern Michigan. If anybody's ever been there and you grow up there, it's really boring. So I ran around barefoot. And it struck a chord with me, and I decided to give it a try and added it into my workout routine, and it worked out really well. It was great. Almost immediately my form improves. A lot of the chronic injuries that I had started to disappear. And I slowly increased the amounts over a period of about a month from occasional training barefoot to just running all the time barefoot. And it turned out to be almost like a running awakening with me. It's been pretty good. I've been able to run quite a few ultras, including Woodstock 100-miler, Hallucination 100. Ran in 5 fingers. So it's something that's really helped me achieve all of my running goals. And I just like sharing that experience and teaching others how to do it, some of the pros and cons, things like that.
Hello everyone.
Hello.
As Trevor mentioned, my name is Brent Lauren. I'm a physical therapist in the area. I'm owner of Probability Physical Therapy. It's a local company. I also teach across the nation for a company called Great Lakes Seminars, 2 other physical therapists. It's the 3rd largest continuing education company for physical therapy and physical therapists specifically. And the course I teach is actually a foot, ankle, and gait course. So essentially what I do is I teach weekend courses to other therapists on how to evaluate foot-related, runner-related injuries. We talk about the foot mechanics in great detail and go into the different foot structures, and then we essentially teach them how to evaluate all the runner-related injuries that you guys have probably heard of or some of you may have had, and how to approach them, how to treat them appropriately. What's been interesting is I've been teaching the course now for going on 9 years, and it's been interesting seeing the different trends over the course of the past 8, 9 years. In the past 2 to 3 years, the heavy influence that the minimalist approach has had, and how it's actually changed our treatment approach as physical therapists. As Jason mentioned, we're seeing a lot of good benefit from utilizing this approach in these foot style and in these foot shoes and then all the shoes that are out there for the minimalist approach and in general strengthening. And we actually you're seeing a trend across America in the physical therapy world where we incorporate a lot of that into our treatment, whereas 3-4 4 years ago, it was never heard of. You know, it was from a therapist standpoint, treatment was always focused on, you know, beefing up the foot. You know, we would utilize orthotics and taping and heavy-duty shoes, you know, and motion controls and Brook Beast, and etc. As our primary focus. And it's, again, it's still a very successful approach, and it's still utilized because everyone's foot structure is different and everyone responds differently to different treatments. But the success that we're seeing with some of the foot strengthening, intrinsic strengthening, and more focus on form and proper gait has obviously caught fire, I would say, in the past 2 to 3 years, but we're seeing a lot of success with it. And we're seeing it not just with, you know, a nice neutral to supinated foot, but we're seeing it with people that have the classic flat-footed, overpronated foot structures that most people think that they need to be in a heavy-duty shoe, but we're finding that they're actually succeeding quite well with, you know, more of a minimalist or a neutral shoe. And again, it doesn't hold true for everyone. So the angle I can take in questions that I could probably feel best for you is who is successful, what have I seen successful as far as which people are more likely to be injury prone and those that are not. We teach a lot of simple things for our patients that are similar to the form things that you'll learn here in the course. A lot of the injuries that we treat, again, from plantar fasciitis to Achilles tendonitis to knee pain to back pain, you know, what we used to do as far as treatment 2 to 3 years ago is quite different now. So that's my perspective. As I mentioned earlier, I see a lot of the bad. So we see people once they've been injured. So at that point, not only are we trying to get them out of their injury, but we're trying to educate them on what potentially caused them and what potentially led them to getting injured. So a lot of times it has to do specifically with the foot structure, but also the actual form. So, thank you.
Hello. So I'm Dave from New Balance, and I've been with New Balance for the last 5 years as both a tech rep and now a sales rep. And what's interesting is that we spend a lot of time at expos and races talking with consumers. And over the last 5 years, as you were mentioning, that there's been a revolution in the footwear industry. And I think what I can contribute to the panel discussion is about the product and kind of the tools that you're using on your feet. And while pure barefoot is the purest sense of running minimalist, unfortunately in North America there are things out there on the roads and on the trails that can hurt our feet. So there are tools that are made that will help protect the feet and simulate barefoot running. And New Balance has made a few different stabs at midfoot, barefoot, minimalist type running. And about 3 years ago now, New Balance introduced a midfoot striker shoe at the time. And at the time, chi running was quite popular in the literature. And that shoe was still kind of bulky. A term used is the drop in a shoe. So as a few different props, here's an example of a shoe that has a conventional drop. And what that refers to is the height in millimeters that the foot sits when it's a thicker heel and a thinner forefoot. And kind of the conventional drop, or that tilt from heel to forefoot, has been about 12 millimeters. So when you think about it, when you wear your conventional running shoe, you're actually on a platform of some kind that shortens the Achilles tendon. So it puts your foot in a different position. And shoes in the last 2 or 3 years, that heel height has been coming down lower so that the drop is becoming more flat. And talking with a few of you just before this, we were talking about 5 fingers, and the 5 finger shoe, you've probably all seen it either on people's feet or in the media. I think Chad got a pair on there. And that shoe is the lowest drop, which means it is a 0 drop, or it's a flat shoe. Your heel is the same height as your forefoot. So that's the pure sense minimal. And companies now have different drops. And the New Balance Minimalist shoe, as an example, when New Balance was trying to evolve that midfoot striker I talked about from a few years ago, they wanted to get more minimal, but still protect the foot and put the foot in a good position, and they determined that a 4 millimeter drop, so much lower heel height than you would see on a conventional running shoe, but still with just a little bit of protective insurance there for the minimalist runner who might revert back to some rear foot strike. So this is an example of the New Balance Minimus, and some of the concepts, without getting too specific into the shoe itself, is lower heel heights and wider forefoot fits. And with some of the minimalist shoes, that wider forefoot, it's designed and it's supposed to be that way to allow your toes to spread and to get more proprioceptive strength or feeling as if simulating barefoot running. So there's been a lot of evolution in footwear in the last couple of years. One question I'm asked all the time is, can you go from this to this quickly? And really the New Balance position is minimalist footwear is a tool in the toolkit, really, and it can complement your conventional running shoe. These running shoes that are very protected and a little bit further off the ground will always be more popular, or in theory always more popular than a minimalist shoe, but there are definitely some strengthening and physical advantages to using a shoe like this in part of your repertoire. And as far as questions, if you have any questions about where the footwear industry is going, at least from the New Balance side of things, and where it's been, I'd be happy to answer those questions. But that's a little bit of background on the drop, which is a key term, and some of the trends on heel heights and wide forefoot.